Okay, so after a change edit, I'm updating the documentation. So technically, this is like a phone. Okay. And this could be a name as well, actually. And I'm putting a question marks here because I wanna highlight that this option, so you can pass this or not. Okay. So we had an idea how this works, right? So we create an instance, call it my contact list, and then we can call some methods that we created. Then we can display the contact, do other operation with the methods that we created, and display it again. So this is pretty good. There are no issues. So what's the first improvement? The first improvement is to create another class, call it contact, to just create a single contact. So this will be class contact, and in this case we want to have this kind of interface. So we would like to do something like this: const say Marco is new contact, and then we want to pass name and phone number. So this could be +45. So you want to do something like this. You know, if you want to have some initialization parameters, what we need to do? So we want to create it. We want to use the constructor, right? Yeah. So because when you create a new class, what goes in those parentheses is actually what you give to the constructor of the class. Does it make sense? Yes. So when I do, let's say, so this would be name. Those two, they will go in the constructor. The constructor is called when you use the new keyword. Okay. And this is, the constructor is like a method, but it's a special one. It's a special method. It's called only when you create the instance with the new keyword. Okay. Okay, so let's use our class. This is our class now, right? Okay. You can see now I get Marco and I get the type. You see, I get Marco contact. This is a bit different than do this. Where is it? This is slightly different than do this. You see the difference? Marco, which is I created with this new contact, has this contact type when I console log. The Marco 2, which is just an object literal, it doesn't. What is the other advantages by using this?
You can reference all the contacts made with it, right? But
Yes, and also name and phone are fixed now. I cannot change them, right? Here I cannot mess things up. When I create a new contact, it's gonna always be name and phone. Plus, what we can do here? Yes. So we are creating an object. This will be pretty much the same object that we created before. So from that point of view, there's no difference there. But with a class, we get some benefits because we know we cannot screw up the shape of the object, the template. Remember the code template. I'm embedding the code template in my class. So that will be the same for every content I create. So when I change it here, the phone, it will change for all the contacts that I will create with this new class. So there is no way I can mess that up. And also I can have some validation. For example, let's say that the name has to be more than. So if that, first of all, we need to. This is a mandatory, right? So without write anything, if we do this. We don't want that. You see what's happening now? It's taking the first argument and give it to name. But we don't want to do that. Therefore, we can check arguments. So the first thing we can do, if we do this console log, we can check the arguments that we pass into the constructor. If we do arguments.length, you can see that the length is 1, but we want always the length 2 because we always name and phone number. So the first check we can do, what it will be? So now I cannot create a contact with just one argument. I need exactly 2. If I go back here to Marco and the phone number, there are no problem. So you see, I'm also embedded some validation inside the class. I couldn't do this in the object, right? I could have done some validation inside the contact list. But now the contact list is a generic contact list. If you think about it, now we can extend our contacts. We can have different kind of contacts. We can have the simple contacts that could be this, but we can have So what I'm doing here, I'm taking the contact and I'm creating another contact called a super contact which inherit the properties of contact, and I can extend it. It's not overriding, it's inherit, and then I can extend it or override it if I want to. But in this case, I would like to extend it. Say now as name, phone, and I don't know, Facebook name or Facebook URL or whatever, right? Could be address. Exactly. So this super contact now can contain more bits than contact without rewrite everything from scratch. I can reuse with this contact. I can reuse what I had in contact and just extend it. Okay, but let's not focus on this.
Why this why you are returning this in the constructor? No, why you are returning this?
Line 6.
Line 6.
Because I want to return the object. So when I
It's
do,
always like that. You need to return what you're putting on the constructor.
No, it does that by itself, right?
Yeah, we do.
Actually, fine without.
okay, is intrinsic the return? Okay, cool.
Let's try it. See?
Okay, yes. So yeah, so the constructor always returns himself this. Okay, cool. Okay, so we can add more validation here. So what other validation we need of? Type of name should be a string.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
there should be a string and no, also we want that the length is at least 1. So more than 0. So let's say that if it's 0 and it's different than a string, we throw an error. And we can do pretty much the same for phone, right? Maybe phone length has to be, let's say, at least 6 or 8, right? So if it's less than 8, it's too short. Okay. And also the phone needs to be a string. Okay, so let's test it. So like this should work. Yes. If I have an empty string, name is not a string or is too short, that's perfect. Then let's have Marco here back and make this 3. Okay, cool.
and make it a number. Removing the strings from the number should also give an error.
Which the phone number? What?
The number says this is a string, right? If you, as I said, if you just remove the text, then you also get an error because it's a number. You like quotations can make it number. We decided that phone is a string.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good, right? For it's not a string or it's too short. So that works too. Sure. Okay, cool. So then we need that one. So now I cannot do this any longer, right? We decided this was a bad thing to do. But now I can do this. I can create Marco and I can pass it here. Then I can create Frank. And I say this is Frank and this is Frank number. And then instead of pass the object, I can just pass the reference to this instance. So let's see if this still works. Yeah, and I have again Marco. Let's take we have a console log somewhere. We did that. Okay, cool. So you see now I have a list, and then the list I've got the type as well. You see, so I get list contact name and phone number, and the same here. When I edit, I need to do pretty much the same. Yep, so the edit here.
Try the Mickey Mouse one.
Yes, so I can. So obviously I cannot do that anymore because
Still we can pass
I can.
to the add.
Yes, that's true, and that's because we are missing a bit here. So what we need to do here? What is contact now? What it should be?
Contact object, contact type.
Yes.
Type of contact.
Yes, I think you can do that. So I think the type of
Instance of contact.
no instance of
Yeah.
instance of contact. I think it's like oops, not type screen. So it works like this. It's not like a type of is contact instance of contact. Instance of contact.
What exactly is that instance of?
You can only pass instance.
So I'm saying that if what I pass here contact is to be instance of contact. So if it's
The class one.
if this is true, it's like type of.
Type of class.
Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
object of that class. Object of class.
Yeah. So I can do that if it's not. I can try an error. And I can say error contact is not type contact. Now here, where I'm passing a partial of the object, I need to be, since we still want to do that, when we, instead of do this operation, we should basically be sure that when we merge this is a type of contact. You know what I mean, right? Because with edit, I could circumnavigate the validation and say, well, instead of put a phone number, I can put something else. So there are two ways of avoid this. Either you check the object that you pass here. You know what I mean, right? When I'm here. So this could be potentially a problem because I could write Mickey Mouse here. And this would pass. The fact the issue here is because there is no validation checking the patch. Let's call this a patch. This is a kind of a patch that will change my contact. So you could do two ways. One simple way would be just to check if it's you can have a white list of keys, and then you can say if it's not one of those keys, then discard this operation. So let's say that our keys are just phone and number, then it will not be, if you pass Mickey Mouse, that won't be valid. That could be one way. Otherwise here,
we can say like if that key is not found in the contact key, like
Object.get properties of.
yeah, so you can check the properties of the new contact and say if the
property of the
match with
contact.
the contact.
Yeah, so you can say this if the contact doesn't contain
Object or get property of
yeah,
context.
either
not
name or
include-
phone or name and
Yeah.
something like that. Or you can also carry on with this and then you can check it here. So here when you merge this again, you should just have always 2 keys. You agree with me, right? Because you are taking this object and then you want to merge this back, and this operation should be a contact object, right? So you can also like check here and say that if this is an instance. So you can create a new contact, right? And then you can let's say this new. So you can create a temp contact, which is the merge of the two, and then say, oops. If this throws an error because you have validation into contact, then this will stop. Otherwise, you can just take this and put it in there. So here I'm merging, and then I'm trying to create a new contact with this. Since, for example, if you add other stuff, this will have like 3 arguments, or the keys that will not be correct. This will throw an error. So here you can have and do this operation and try and catch. Otherwise, you just throw an error. And honestly, you don't need to save this. This is just for you to do a check. But so you are merging here, and then you try to create a new contact with the merged object, and then since there is a validation, this new contact that will fail if something is wrong. Otherwise, you can take the new contact if you want to. It's the same.
Does it make sense?
So now if I add this validation and I go back and do Mickey Mouse here, this should return an error. Yeah, you see the operation didn't go through. I couldn't edit. You see, I'm doing phone number, but the edit didn't go through. And I should
Why doesn't it?
I should see the error
He
here.
didn't tell him to throw he only made the.
Is to throw an error message.
Oh, he only made it so.
Yeah, because you have 2 arguments.
Yeah, I should also check the arguments. So technically, I should improve and say if this arguments dot phone. So yeah, I should have a little better validation. But the point is that I don't want to make this too complex. But the idea is that this operation, we don't need try catcher because it's not throwing any error there. But you can see that the operation is not done.
No, it doesn't throw an error because you never try to give it Mickey Mouse in. You access the properties explicitly. So even though you merge them into temp contact, it doesn't matter that Mickey Mouse is in there because you throw that away.
Now, when I merge them in
Yeah.
here, I've got this temp contact, right?
Yeah.
And if it's Mickey Mouse is there, they will be there.
Yes.
Only what you have used, only 2 of them. There are
Exactly like you say. Also, like on the next line, line 16.
You want name and phone.
Yeah, you only access name and phone. So that way you have like
No
implicit. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm not. So I should basically check the keys of this here. So like one way would be to SSL, like to have a white list of keys of that object. So you know that the keys are like name and phone, and there can only be that. And there are really many ways of do that. I can leave it there as an exercise. But basically, it's to check the keys with you know this, right? And then you can iterate over this and check if all these keys, if there is a key that doesn't belong to the whitelist keys, then you need to throw an error. And then you can do this operation directly to this new contact here. So this would be this new contact keys, and then you do for each. And well, I don't want to solve it for you, but those are keys, right? And then you can check with a set of white label keys. And what the white label keys, or white list keys is equal to, let's say, name and phone. Oops. Something like that. And then if the keys is not in this, you can use index of, right? Then there is a problem, you throw an error. Is that okay? So I'll leave this improvement to you. Improve validation. Cool. So this can return to be this. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so I can still do, because of my missing validation, I can still make this horrible. Okay, let's keep it like that. Cool. So that's the improvement that we can do with the contact. So we have a template we define in our contact. So we have a name and phone, and then we can add some validation before this operation. I would like that you do the same. And maybe you can try to fix this. I would like to see how you solve it. This edit operation. Let's spend 25 minutes on this, 20 minutes. So create a class contact, like I did. Create some validation. Doesn't have to be exactly as mine. I mean, this is not it's not the point to make the code perfect. It's to more understand object-oriented programming than anything else. It's not like a JavaScript course. JavaScript is a tool for us to understand OOP.
Can you share the code? Share the code.
No, you need to write this code yourself. You need to write a class contact and use it. You need to do this yourself. Try to do it yourself. You have 20 minutes.
Oh, come on. It's already done in there, so we can fix that.
Yeah, but try to try to do yourself and try to fix the edit. So what I want to do that if I have the Mickey Mouse in my patch, that should throw an error. So you need a class, you need a constructor, you need to pass some arguments. Then when you create the class, try to use it, obviously, to create some contacts and add to the contact list. And then display the contact list, the content of the contact list.
What are you struggling with? What happened to the content list you made before? But you can just reuse that, then just modify it. That's what I would do at least. So do you understand what to do now? Yeah, you have to make a new class contact. And then you have to do in the places where you can change or add data to the contact list, you have to make sure that what you get in is this new class contact. So you should start by defining the class contact.
Do you want to have 5 more minutes or? Yes.
take it. If I don't take it as a string, it will still work.
Okay. Alrighty. Three more minutes, I guess. I don't see you very responsive anymore. So it seems you are busy. Yeah. Alrighty. The tiny change that I did is that when you edit, let's say even with a valid patch, like phone, you still want to have a type contact in your contact list. So the tiny change I did that instead of just give the temp contact here, I use this. I create a new contact with a contact name and phone, and this is allowed me to have to keep the type contact. Otherwise, when I will patch it, it will be just an object, literal. This also should have a little bit of validation because it will not throw an error, but I think you cannot do this anymore. Yeah, it won't change, but it will not throw an error. Will be better if you can throw an error here, like we said. Okay. If you're not done, it's not a problem. This will be part of your homeworks. So all the things you cannot complete, just go back at home and try to do later at home. Okay, so now we want. So there is like so you can see our software is growing, right? Now we are line on 100, and we would like to reuse this code because this code is quite generic, and the contact list is basically a generic code, and this is actually my code. So I would like to make this into basically a module. Yeah. And modules, they're good to reuse your code. And if you go back to the slides, okay. So first of all, question: what constructor does in a class? What is?
Initialize.
Yeah. When it's called the constructor.
When we declare an object of the class.
Yeah, when you create a new instance. Yeah, perfect. Is constructor a special method necessary? Is it mandatory that needs to be in the class?
If you want multiple instances, probably.
I think it is.
So what do you need a constructor for? Let's go back to the previous question. When you want to init something. Yeah, but if you want to init anything, then you don't need a constructor, right? So it's fine. I mean, there are cases where your class doesn't have a constructor, then it's fine. That means that when you do a new class, will not init anything. So this is what I'm trying to say, that this code. So I'll text it here. So this code, oops, and doesn't have a constructor, and that's just my method add. This is valid, even if it doesn't have the constructor method in there. This is perfectly valid. Doesn't need to be there. Okay, nice, good. Okay, so before we jump into npm init, I want to show you something else. npm and is commands, I want to show something else. So let's make this into modules. So I want to split my code basically here, right? I want to have this code, which will be my main code, and then my classes, which are two, right? This one here and one here. And then you can see I have the main code. So how do you do that in Node? So let's create a new file. And let's call it this contact.js. So now I will take this out of here and I passed it here. So those are my two classes as before. So I can do module.exports. Then I can have contact, and contact list. Cool. Now here. So I can do like contact list. Okay. Yes. So what did I do here? I took my contact and the contact list class, and I used this tiny extra piece of code to export those two classes. And this is kind of a shorthand to write this.
Contact equal to contact.
This is the same as this. But I just export like an object and object with the classes. The fact that you don't see the column is because it's implicit. When you don't write, it's gonna be contact column contact. And then in the index class, I can deconstruct. So this is a deconstructor. Basically, this is a module, and then I can. Those are the keys of the module. Contact list. You probably have seen this before. It's a way to decompose an object. Because otherwise you can do this contact module, and then if you console log that, you will see that this has. Just want to be clear about this. Let's do return. So you see, the contact module is an object with the contact and contact list. So I could do this, right? Contact. So I could have done this. Oops. That's pretty much works the same way as before. But instead of do this create a contact and do contact, or just use this directly, I could have used this directly here. I'm using the constructor, so I basically do this. Okay. So the import export works this way. The export part is this. Is module.exports and then an object of keys with the classes or whatever you want to export. You can also have a function here. So a function add you could do this easily and have that one there. And then when you go to the index, you can add a function there. So you can export whatever you want. You can also export a constant. In fact, usually there is like a file called constant that could export all your constants. Let's say you have some configuration part, like the webpack config.json file. That's pretty much a big JavaScript object that you export. So this is the Node.js way with the module.exports. So in ES6, in ES6 there is this import and export keywords, but you can see that those things are not working here. If I do import here, I don't think it's gonna work. Maybe import works, but not doesn't, right?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Unexpected token import. Basically, it doesn't understand what is import. So we need to use the either use require or we need to use a transpiler like bubble that will basically take the old way, which is to require, and will transpile in the new way. Yes. Oh, sorry, the other way around. Sorry, we'll take the new one. I will transpile in the old way, so Node can understand. So so now this is the tricky part. In the previous classes, I will try to configure this bubble transpiling by scratch. And what I found out that it will spend 1 hour with 30 different problems. So I decided to write kind of a tool that will scaffold a project for you automatically. So so Bubble needs to have like a source directory and a dist directory. And the source directory, you have your file, then you have some configuration. You can use either Webpack or roll up or just Bubble. There are a million different ways. And then when I start to say something that people say, oh, can we use this and can we use this? So I decided to make one tool to create one configuration that is the same for everyone. So we don't spend time to config this. Then you can take a look and see how it works. But the super basic idea of Bubble and all the tools that use Bubble, let's say Webpack or Rollup, the idea is to take some code and change it in some other version of code. Let's say a new version of JavaScript, transpile it in some older version of JavaScript, or a version of JavaScript that doesn't support some features in a version of JavaScript that use some special features in a version of JavaScript that replicates those features without having that feature. So that's the transpile. Well, that's why we need transpiling, because what you want to do is we want to work with the latest features. But sometimes your environment, let's say Node or old browsers or whatever, they don't support the latest feature. And that's the transpilers comes in. You will transform in an little bit older version. And this is good for you because you can always write new code. You can always keep using the latest JavaScript features. Cool. So before we start that, we don't have so much time. I will create a new directory and let's call this modules. Let's say, let's call it class modules. Okay. Oops. So now I'm in a new directory, right? In this one, class module, and this is empty. You can see it's empty. So I just need an npm init in this case because the tool will do all the rest. If you do npm init will create a package.json file. And this package.json files collects information about your project, the name of the project, how to start the project, which dependency your projects use, and which tools, which dev dependency your project use, and so on and so forth. And this is, you will see in every project that use Node, there will be a package.json file. So if I do npm init, it will ask me for a name, and then I say class modules, version, description, class that use modules, entry point, index.js, we can keep that, test command, git repository, we don't have one, keywords node, contact list, yeah, and outer will put my name. License is fine. Is this okay? Yes. So if I do ll, Now I have this package.json file, and this basically contains all the information that I just typed in. Has a script and keywords and an author and a license. Okay, so at this point you have two options now. Either you build your own, you build your own boilerplate for Bubble. So you start to download Bubble, and you start to create a source directory, and blah blah blah. And then we spend half an hour on that. Or you download a tool called Node Scaffolder. I will use it first, and then you can check this later. So if this Node Scaffolder, it will say, "Hi, welcome to Node Scaffolder." Then you can choose your language, and then you say JavaScript. Enter. Which bundler do you want? Let's say Webpack. Linter, I don't want none. You're all done. As you can see, Scaffolder, it create a README file, a Webpack config for me, and a package of JSON with some scripts, and it puts some dev dependencies, and so on and so forth. So now it says, okay, done. You're all set. Try to run npm install. So npm install basically will read the dev dependencies from the package.json file and will install those in the project. Now if I do npm start, it will run npm, create a dist folder with the transpiled code, and that's pretty much it. So let's look into this. This is a bit magic now, I know, but it will save us some time. So there are basically two folders. Node modules is basically the automatically generated folder which contains all the modules of a project. So now we are using external modules. We're not only using the core modules, we're using external modules. The source is where we write our code. So that's our source. And the dist is where the transpiled code goes. So here is where you want to write your code, but this is what you want to run. You see this? This is what you want to run, but this is what where you want to write. So now let's take these two bad boys here, and let's put in the source. So do you remember that before I couldn't use import? Now if I do it again in npm start, I get this working, and I can use import. I'm writing my code in here, in source. You can see I have those two files, and those are the same file as before. I just copied in here. And this is actually the code that is running. And you can see there is some extra code that Webpack add for me automatically when it transpiles. Okay. And you can see that it's also bundling everything in one file. You can see that it's one big file. I can write in multiple files, but this is building in one file. So you just need to run this index. It's a bomb. Okay. Does make sense? So this setup, it's for you to transpile with Webpack. And Webpack is using Bubble, so there's no magic. And this is the configuration of Webpack. And the README is something auto-generated README as well. So to tell you that if you wanna run with the install, you need to install. Then you can build with npm run build. Then if you wanna build for production, you can do this, and watch is comfortable, because if you do npm run watch, every time you change your something here, this will run again. So this will look for your code, for your source code, and every time you change the source code, will re-transpile for you. So you don't have to do every time npm start. And then when you want to run it, you just do node dist. Remember that your the file that you need to run is in the dist folder. Remember, you need to run the transpiled version, not the source code.
But if we have, for example, a syntax error at the source folder, will we see it at the...
Webpack will complain. Webpack will not be able to transpile it. If you have a problem with the source code, Webpack will tell you there is a problem with the source code, and then I cannot transpile it. Okay, so that's usually what I do. I have my Webpack running all the time, transpiling all the time, and then I have another terminal where I can basically run the command. Let's say this node, this index.js to run. Okay, so if you want to use this node scaffolder tool that will make everything a bit quicker, then you can use this. Otherwise, you can. There are plenty of resources online. Find a way to
On Babel website, everything is clear.
Yeah, you can use a Babel, or you can use other way of transpile. If we use this, the plus that everybody will have the same setup. So how do you install this? It will be npm I, then the name of the package, and then -g, and the I stands for install. So this is the same as write install. So now I want to go back to the npm and talk about npm. So now we are using npm because we are pulling down external modules. For example, Webpack and Webpack command line interface. So we are using external modules. That's where npm comes in. The three important commands that we need to know are those three. npm init for init our package.json file. npm install, or just npm I is the same, for install your dependencies. And then npm uninstall for uninstall your dependencies. And there are three flags. Save, you use save when you want to save the package that you want to install in your...
Save comes by default.
Yes, it's now by default. And so this is a kind of a default now. Basically, when you do npm install a package, if you don't pass any flag, it will automatically save that package in your package.json file. So the next time you run that project and you do npm install, that package will be installed. Does it make sense? The save dev is pretty much like save, but the save dev goes in the dev dependencies. And the difference between dev dependencies and the dependencies, that the dev dependencies are not part of the project, are modules that you need maybe to build the project. That's some tooling, but they're not part of the project itself. Okay, what you run will not contain part of the dev dependencies. And this -g flag, it means global. So if you need to install a tool that you need to use across multiple folders, and you want to use everywhere from the terminal, let's say like Webpack or the node scaffolder tool, then you need to have that -g, so that you can call that command from everywhere. That means it's a global. So this is the 10 minutes explanation of npm. Obviously, npm is a little bit more than this. I think this is enough for us to understand. But there are the docs over there, and then I think there are a lot of nice information, and I think this is one of the must-read things. Could be part of your homeworks as well, some reading material. And npm is a good thing to get to know. npm also outworks the package.json file. Cool. Yes. So that's what I said. Node with ES6. We can use Bubble, and you can look at Bubble. This bubble.js.io. There are examples there you can transpile and just use the Bubble command line interface. This is in the case you don't want to use the Node scaffolder tools. You can just use Bubble. Cool. There is this Node Bubble. This is an open source repository that has already everything set up. So if you want to, mess up with the documentation and you want to skip that part and you will just start to code with ES6, you can download the repository from my GitHub. Yes. We already had a look at this. So yeah, we are on week 3 now. So this was for today. I want to have a look into the package.json just to clarify a couple of things.
And about the homework, are we gonna take a look what it is?
The homeworks? Yeah, it will come on Slack.
Okay.
Yeah, they will come on Slack. Because basically, what me and Roy are trying to do is to recycle some of the exercise of the previous classes.
Okay.
Because also it's a bit easier for us to go through and speed up also the check. And but let's see, because we don't want to always do that, so we're changing as well. Okay, so the dev dependency and the dependency. The dev dependency, yes.
You made the source and you made the dist folder.
Yes.
Why did you make both?
Why do you make?
Yeah, why do we have both of them? I mean, if we code in the source, shouldn't that be fine? And
No.
just post that?
No, because the source contains your source file, but you want to run the transpiled version of that. So you want to run this index.js.
Okay, so you're saying
Because this has some stuff that Node doesn't understand. So you cannot run that one.
okay.
In fact, if I go here and I do node src index.js, that will turn error. You see? Unexpected token import. Doesn't understand what is import. But if I run the dist, that will be fine.
So if we have a node server, we take the dist folder and use that.
Yes. Yes. So you write your code in your source folder, and you can have as many files as you want, and you do whatever you want to do there. But when you want to run it, you need to run the transpiled version, which is in here. And you also got source. You have the .map file. That's a source map file. Basically, it's a file that allows you to go from the transpiled version back to your source file. So that's also good for errors. So if you run that on that map will say, okay, if you have an error on, let's say, on line 23 on the compiled version, it's actually line 73 of this file on your source code. So it's a way to map back.
So the .map file is...
Yeah, the .map file. And that's automatically auto-generated from... So the dist folder is totally auto-generated. So in fact, I can go and delete it. I can delete the dist folder, trash, and then when I run this again, it reappears. So Webpack is always generating that for me. So I really don't need a dist folder. This folder is just the outcome. What is important is your source file.
It's like Babel is for transpiling
Yeah.
code and the Webpack is for bundling.
Yeah, and exactly, yeah. A Webpack is doing both now. It's both transpiling and and bundling for you.
And what's the difference between like Babel and Webpack?
So Bubble will transpile, let's say, from an ES6 to ES5, let's
Like
say.
if Webpack is doing that, then why do you need Babel?
No. Webpack is using Bubble underneath.
Okay.
It's using Bubble and it's also doing some extra stuff for you. For example, like bundling. And could do other stuff that this is just really simple setup. But if you have a look at here, it says take the source index and output in the dist folder and call it index.js. And if you run with production, don't create any source map. Otherwise, create a source map. So you create a source map only if you're in development mode. And this is the Webpack config. So you can see this is the entry point, this is your input, your source index file, and this is your output, the index.js in the dist folder. This is really minimal setup. Questions before we say bye to each other?
What will we talk about next week?
So those 2 weeks were more like a mix, I would say, of understanding Node, understanding promises. Was a little bit of like promises is kind of a JavaScript thing. But then we got Node to more architectural things and to understand how Node works. Now we got an OP, so we did some also software design. So this is kind of a preparation for you, because now we're going to jump more into the web. Now we're going to think about creating a web server and blah blah.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk much about, if you think about it, we didn't really talk about web. We were just coding things that are really not much related into the web, right? But now let's say, now we got a class, right? Now we got a contact list. How can create that? How can make that contact list available to the world with a web server? How can that become a REST API? So that's now the next challenge, right?
Yeah.
We got a contact list applying object-oriented programming. How we can now take leverage of that and make a web server out of the contact list, so we have some endpoints that we can use to create and add and have a centralized contact list running into in a server publicly over internet. So that's next. That's the next big question. So we are going towards now the web more. Yes.
What is package?
So yeah, the package.json is that file that we created when we run npm init. So if I create another folder, so here I create another folder. So if I go into the test folder, you see this folder is empty. But if I do npm init, it will start to ask me some question. Package name, test folder, fine. Version 1, fine. Description, this is a test. Entry point, index is fine. Test command, I don't have it. Git repository, I don't have it. Keywords, node test. Author, that's me. License is okay, yes. Now if I go and check, the npm init command created package.json for me. So now if I do npm install, let's say express, that command will alter my package.json and add an express dependency. But if I do, let's say webpack, and I do save dev, now that express, it will be in dev dependencies. You see?
Why would we make the package package JSON. Why is the need to make that?
Yes, because let's say I delete this, right?
Yeah.
Now I do npm install. This npm install is gonna read the package.json file, understand that you want to install this, and then will install Express from me. So if I go in Node and I go to Express, Express is there. So this package is useful when you run npm install and you start a new project. It will read the dependency of that project and will install that for you automatically. Because if I write a software that has 3 dependencies, you need to know about it, right? Because when you install on your machine, you need to have the same dependencies that I have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you cannot run my code, because in my code, I call some other code, other piece of software, right? And just to give an example, like if you go on my repository, and let's say this is something I'm building with a friend. If you go in the React part, there is a package.json file, and then you can see those are my dependencies. So when you install this on your machine, you're gonna get those dependencies and those dev dependencies.
It's also simple.
I could also see you didn't have the node module package. If you go back.
Back where?
Yeah, to the previous slide.
Previous page.
On your
In the browser.
yeah. Yeah, you don't have the
Node
node
modules.
module.
No. You don't need to put node modules anywhere. As far as you give me what I need to install, when I run npm install, then I will get the node modules folders. So this folder, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I didn't say that. This node folder is automatically generated. I can delete it, and in my test folder, when I do npm install or npm I, that node modules is back. So that's also auto-generated folder. All the auto-generated folder, they don't need to be on GitHub. That's why you don't see the dist folder and the node modules folder in my GitHub, because they don't need to be there.
If I let's say I made a project, I installed all my modules and everything. If I wanted to put it up on GitHub, wouldn't the node modules and everything go with it?
Yeah, you can have a file, call it a git ignore.
Oh,
And on a git ignore, you can say you don't want node modules on the dist, and then they will not be part of Git anymore. Git will. You can actually see that if I go in my class modules and I create this file, go to git ignore, and I write node modules. Look the color of this. When I save it, this git ignore file. Okay, maybe because I don't have a repository yet, but this will be gray out. This Git will say, oh, I'm not watching this folder because I ignore it. And usually I put dist as well. No reason. Those are automatically generated folders. No reason to be on GitHub.
Can we say that using classes is a new way instead of using functional programming concepts like constructor functions and factory functions?
You know, when you open a tool set, you have a hammer and you have the screw, right? You need both.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a tool set only with screws or only with hammers. You need how to use a hammer and how to use a screw. So functional programming is really good for something, and OP is good for something else. Ideally you need to know both and use both accordingly. And there's nothing will stop you to use both at the same time, because you can have some OP to design your game, but maybe you have some streaming functionality, and then maybe use functional programming. So there are two paradigms, and one is not replacing the other. The idea is not you don't buy a screw for replace the hammer. You want to keep the hammer and also buy a screwdriver, right? Because you need both in your project. And the same here. OP is not trying to replace functional programming, and also the other way around. That's not the case. But you will see that in some cases really easy. Use OP mentality.
It's more easier.
In some other cases, OP doesn't make really sense because you are using, I don't know, you just have one huge stream of data, and then you want to keep this data piping into a series of functions and stuff. That probably functional programming makes more sense. I don't know, but it's important to know both. Ideally both, yeah. But for us now, OP makes more sense, if you ask me. So OP makes more sense because then you will see that there is kind of a relationship between OP and design a REST API server. There is a kind of a similarities with the HTTP verbs and other stuff. There's kind of it's easy to wrap a class and make it from a class an HTTP web server. The step is not that big. So that's why I'm introducing OOP. Perfect. Alrighty. Good. The homeworks they will